Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Friday. We're gonna update ourselves on what's going on at the end of the week and if there's any new things happening for the weekend. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I called you for 10 minutes, nothing, so.
My phone didn't know me. I don't know what the hell's going on. Alright, well, I'm here.
You are indeed here.
I woke myself up.
Through pure willpower.
Yeah, Will, you be an asshole. That's why they're always shooting at him in movies. You know,
Totally.
They say fire at Will. Fucking Will, what the hell will he do? Fire at him. Hey. Alright, we're about halfway there. So you know. For you. Let's see what we got here.
We've got 3 stories. That's what we got.
Right. We got 3 stories. Go on.
Do you want your bandana on still?
No.
I didn't think so.
Right. I don't even care what I look like most of the time, right? They're like, yeah, I'm awake.
Hey, that's a great way to live.
There's a head on the end of my neck. That's all you're getting to.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The
All right.
floating head.
Let's start with our news stories here. Today on Before Coffee, Britons who want to rejoin the EU at the highest since 2016, survey finds.
The Titanic tragedy is concluded with the discovery of pieces of the vessel.
Twitter agrees to comply with tough EU disinformation laws.
Infighting among Putin's lieutenants seemed to reveal signs of a deep dysfunction.
Rare finds of 24 ancient bronzes in the Tuscany goes on display in Rome.
And blood red crickets invade Nevada town today on June 23rd, 2023 edition of Before Coffee.
Okay, let's start our news on the UK and Brexit. This is an article from John Henley and Michael Goodyear on The Guardian. 7 years after Brexit referendum, the proportion of Britons who want to rejoin the EU has climbed to its highest levels since 2016, according to a new survey. Both Britons and Europeans also think the UK's return to the EU is becoming more likely, while British respondents are more optimistic about the bloc's future, to the extent of trusting the European Commission more than their own government. Data from YouGov's latest Brexit Tracker survey found that, excluding those who said they would not vote or did not know, 58.2% of people in Britain would now vote to rejoin. Percentage is only fractionally down on the 60% recorded in February this year, the highest figure since comparable data began in February 2012, and has risen more or less consistently since a post-referendum low of 47% in early 2021. The survey also found Europeans are a lot less likely to think other countries would follow Britain's example. Asked whether they would vote to remain in the EU or leave in a Brexit-style referendum, 62% of respondents in France and 63% in Italy, which are traditionally among the least enthusiastic EU member states, said they would vote to stay. Across most of the countries surveyed, support for the continued EU membership has now dropped back to levels it enjoyed before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which sparked a strong surge in pro-European sentiment, the YouGov figures show. Elsewhere in the EU, 80% of respondents in Spain last month would choose to remain, along with 79% in Denmark, 70% in Sweden, and 69% in Germany. Nice. A record proportion of respondents in Britain also think other countries are now unlikely to follow its example and leave the EU in the next decade. 42% said it was unlikely, up from the 26% 3 years ago, while 40% said it was likely, down from the 58%. EU member states showed a similar trend, with 45% of respondents in France saying they thought another EU exit was likely, compared to 55% in February 2020. In Germany, figures were 36%, down from 42%. In Denmark, 29%. So that's the percentage. A lot of basically, to sum that all those numbers up, likelihood of people staying in the EU, above 50. Likelihood of people thinking that someone's going to leave the EU, below 50, okay? So no one believes anyone else is going to do an exit. There was an exit at some point, the Netherlands leaving, but there's no way the Netherlands would leave. As a merchant country, the Netherlands needs a free moving economy, and they could not, like, it would be terrible for the Netherlands having to draw up a new contracts and new trade agreements with all of the countries that it's surrounded by. Would be a stupid idea. So Nexit would never happen. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. Whatever your cultural or societal complaints are, economically, which is what most of the world is run by, economics, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, xenophobia is never a good policy economically, and it's always a disaster. It's like, we don't want them immigrants picking our food. Okay, well, nobody's picking your food then. Enjoy high prices and vegetables because they're rotting in the fields.
Yeah, great. Okay. There is less optimism, however, about Brexit's impact on Britain's economy. About 58% of UK respondents said in April that they thought the country's exit from the EU would have a negative impact, up sharply from 50% 2 years ago. Respondents outside the UK were generally less pessimistic about the country's prospects than those inside, and more likely to say that leaving the bloc would have no significant impact either way on Britain's economic performance. Perhaps most startlingly, the data showed respondents in Britain are now also more likely, albeit by a narrow margin, to say they trust the European Commission at 25%, more than they trust their own government, which is at 24%. So by 1%, they trust the EU more than their own government. Trust in the British government is still pretty low, though, at 20%. Like, hello. It crashed from its high of 40% in April of 2021, just after the UK's successful early COVID vaccine rollout, and as lockdown restrictions were being eased, while trust in the Commission has crept up since 2016. That's the end of my story on Brexit and how people are feeling about it.
There's such thing as a healthy mistrust in the government, but it's another thing they just think, they're always doing the wrong thing, so let's never cooperate. Well, then you're just making it not work. That's all you're doing. That's my stupid 2 cents. All right. Since most news is bad news, we're back to the wrapping up the doomed Titan module.
Submersible is what they're calling it.
The search for a missing Titanic-bound submersible will become an investigation and salvage mission that will take an indefinite amount of time, officials said, as tributes from around the world poured in for the 5 people killed when the vessel imploded in deep North Atlantic. The announcement Thursday that all aboard perished when the submersible imploded near the site of the iconic shipwreck brought a tragic end to the 5-day saga that included an urgent around-the-clock search for the vessel known as the Titan. The investigation into what happened was already underway and would continue in the area around the Titanic, where the debris from the submersible was found, said Rear Admiral John Mauger of the 1st Coast Guard District. I know there are also a lot of questions about how, why, and when this did happen. Those are questions we will collect as much information as we can about now. Mauger said, adding that it was a complex case that happened in a remote part of the ocean, involved people from several different countries. So there is your story. There's not much to report other than the investigation is ongoing, but we didn't want to leave that story hanging there in case it's the only place you ever get your news.
I think it's additionally important to indicate that they actually knew about the implosion, like on the day when it happened, but they didn't reveal that they knew about it because they were using their secret. The U.S. Navy was using secret technology to hear things in the ocean, and they didn't want anybody to know about their secret technology, which has not been named because it's a secret technology. But they heard the implosion as of the loss of contact on Sunday, and they were like, let's just waste more tax money sending everyone to rescue people we already know imploded under the sea because we don't want to tell them about our secret technology.
Entirely possible. And maybe the Russians already knew it, and they didn't want to tell us, right?
Yeah.
You never know. Yeah, we know more than we let on, and we're not about to tell you that. So, yeah.
But at least we still have our secret sea listening technology.
As common sense people would have told you from the very start they were doomed. I would have told you that. I mean, I kind of did, but I'm all like, I hope they're okay, but, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. Your story, you know, people aren't talking to you. They're probably gone. All right, go ahead.
Okay, our next story is about Twitter because this is really important for some people to hear about. And this is from Lisa O'Carroll at The Guardian. Twitter has agreed to comply with tough new EU laws on fake news, Russian propaganda, and online crime after a team of officials from the European Commission entered its headquarters to stress test its capacity to operate legally in Europe. The move came just weeks after Elon Musk, Twitter's owner, quit the bloc's voluntary code of practice on disinformation. In the first exercise of its kind, EU officials were allowed into the company's headquarters on Thursday to carry out a mock exercise with Twitter staff to test its controls on Russian propaganda, fake news, and criminal activity, including child sexual exploitation. Thierry Breton, the commissioner responsible for enforcement of the new Digital Services Act, welcomed the fact that the company voluntarily agreed to the test. He reiterated his warning to all social media companies that the EU would act swiftly and sharply to uphold the sweeping new laws that entered into force in August. When it comes to online crime, there can be no half measures. Very large online platforms need to put the necessary internal controls and resources in place to be ready for the new European rules, he said. The new laws come in force on the 24th of August, but EU fears that Twitter may not comply had become heightened, with one commissioner warning the company recently that a Wild West operation would not be tolerated. The checks in exercise covered areas including recommended content and controls to fight illegal content online, such as online child sexual exploitation, as well as Twitter's approach to disinformation. 44 companies, including Google and Facebook, are participating in the EU's Code of Practice, which the bloc introduced as a means of helping social media platforms prepare for the new laws. The EU had warned Musk he could face a complete ban in Europe or fines running up to 6% of its global revenue if it does not comply with the laws. Breton, on the 2-day visit to Silicon Valley, said Twitter still had a long way to go to get ready. Twitter is taking the exercise seriously and has identified the key areas on which it needs to focus to comply with the DSA. With 2 months to go before the new EU regulation kicks in, work needs to continue for the system to be in place and work effectively and quickly. I told Elon Musk and Linda Yaccarino, Twitter's chief executive, that Twitter should be very diligent in preparing to tackle illegal content in the European Union. Fighting disinformation, including pro-Russian propaganda, will also be a focus area in particular as we are entering a period of elections in Europe, and we don't want anybody who's pro-Russian to be elected into power. That's me. That's editorializing there. That's what they're inferring, I think. They're like, we don't want any pro-Russians to be elected. We have no compromises with Russia, because if anybody, as we've seen in the past, if you make friends with Russia, they end up putting a puppet in power, and then suddenly you're basically a satellite state. So...
Yep. Next thing you know, that's what they were trying in the Ukraine. When Rudy Giuliani was over there poking around. All right, and more Ukraine news. Well, it's Russia news, really. This is from the Associated Press of infighting among Putin's lieutenants. The video is shocking, not just for what it showed, but also for what it said. Yevgeny Prigozhin The outspoken millionaire head of the private military contractor Wagner stood in front of the bloody bodies of his slain troops in Ukraine and yelled expletive-riddled insults at Russian military leaders, blaming them for the carnage. They came here as volunteers and they died to let you lounge in your redwood offices. Prigozhin shouted, "You are sitting in your expensive clubs, your children are enjoying good living and filming videos on YouTube. Those who don't give us ammunition will be eaten alive in hell." It was a display for Russians used to more than 2 decades of rigidly controlled rule by President Vladimir Putin, years with little sign of infighting among his top lieutenants. Prigozhin's video in May and his other rants against military leadership have been met with silence from Putin as well as the brass. Some see Putin's failure to squelch the infighting as a sign of potential shifts in Russia's potential scene that set the stage for more internal battles. Prigozhin's rift at the military has been ignored by state-controlled TV, where most Russians get their news, although it is followed closely by politically active, ultra-patriotic readers and viewers on social media networks which share its contempt for military leaders. While there are no indications that Putin is losing influence, there are growing signs of deep dysfunction, anxiety, worry about the war, and real problems in marshaling the resources necessary to fight it effectively, said Nigel Gold Davies, a senior fellow for Russia and Eurasia in our International Institute for Strategic Studies and the editor of its strategic survey. Prigozhin's feud with the military leaders goes back years, and it spilled into the open amid the fighting for the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, which is spearheaded by his mercenaries. It has pushed the 62-year-old Wagner, dubbed Putin's chef for his lucrative Kremlin catering contracts, to the forefront of Russian politics and signaled his growing ambitions. He scathingly criticized Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief General Staff Valery Gerasimov as weak and incompetent in a mocking statement full of vulgar language. At one point, he even alleged the army planted mines in the route and its fighters planned to use and open fire on them. With his crude remarks, Prigozhin ventured into the territory where only Putin had gone before. Over the years, the Russian leader occasionally broke decorum, an early remark or off-color joke, while top officials used carefully worded language. In a later video, Prigozhin made a statement that some have interpreted as thinly veiled attack on Putin himself. He declared that while his men were dying due to the defense ministry's failure to supply ammunition, a happy granddad was thinking he's doing well, and then referred to that granddad with an obscenity. The blunt comment caused social media uproar, where it was broadly seen as a reference to Putin. Prigozhin later said he was talking about Gerasimov. Prigozhin is now sailing much closer to the wind than he has or had, Gold Davies told the Associated Press. Okay. Sergei Markov, a pro-Kremlin political commentator, described Prigozhin as the second most popular man after Putin and a symbol of Russian military victim for millions of people. Putin needs Prigozhin's mercenaries at a time when the regular military is still recovering from setbacks from earlier in the invasion. The Wagner chief's position has been bolstered as the private army captured Bakhmut last month in a war's longest and bloodiest battle, relying on tens of thousands of convicts who were promised pardons if they survived 6 months of fighting. Putin dominates the system, but he still sort of depends on a small number of big people to implement his will, to provide them with resources to carry out his orders, including fighting the war. While Putin may adhere to keeping various factions divided and then interviewing to decide who wins and who loses and who's up and who's down, the process erodes the government's authority in wartime, Gold Davies said. That may be a way of keeping the political system going, but it's certainly not the way to fight a war, because if your military forces are divided and if you're not fighting together effectively, then your military operations will suffer accordingly, and that's exactly what's happening here. So it goes on for a while longer. We don't want to totally plagiarize AP, but bottom line, we should be expecting this guy to not go in any tall buildings for a long time, in case he falls out.
Yeah, of course.
Sir.
Okay. In more archaeological news, a trove of bronze statues are buried by mud and boiling water for thousands of years before being forced into ruins of a network of ancient thermal springs in a small town Tuscany are going to be displayed in Rome. This is from Angela Giuffrida in Rome on The Guardian. The 24 bronzes, mostly dedicated to the gods, are the largest discovery of their kind in Italy and were unearthed last year in ancient springs of San Cassiano de Bajni, in which used to be placed on worship for both the Etruscans and the Romans. The statues, which experts believe were commissioned by wealthy families living in the area, including a sleeping Hygeia, the goddess of health, with a snake wrapped around her arm, and one dedicated to Apollo, the god of the sun and light. They once adorned the rim of an oval-shaped bath before being immersed in water in a spiritual ceremony believed to have occurred in the 1st century AD. Entitled Gli de Ritornano, the god's return, the exhibition of Palazzo Quirinale runs from the 23rd of June until the 25th of July, before resuming on the 2nd of September until the 29th of October 2023. The relics will eventually be displayed in a museum being developed in San Cassiano de Bagni, a hilltop town close to Siena. Discoveries at the ancient spring, believed to have been built by the Etruscans in the 2nd century BC, have included 6,000 coins along with an array of votives. These include small figurines depicting the palm of a hand holding money, a penis, a pair of breasts, and a child wrapped in swaddling cloth that would have been offered up to the gods in holy water in hope of bringing conception of general good luck. Interesting. The sanctuary was made more opulent during the Roman period, when it was frequented by emperors including Augustus, who was the first emperor of Rome, and remained active until the 5th century AD, before being closed down, but not destroyed, during Christian times. The pools were sealed with heavy stone pillars, while the divine statues were left in the water, which was rich in minerals, including calcium and magnesium. The water was considered good for the liver, for treating facial pain, and for helping with fertility. So I think what they're indicating there is because of how the water was very mineralistic in calcium and magnesium, it was able to encase the statues in calcium, and they basically were, they weren't eroded over time. They were just encased in calcium, which helped them be here today, or I guess last year when they discovered them, which would have been, 2,000-ish years ago, 1st century AD. So pretty cool.
Are we gonna preserve them as well as they were?
Probably not, but they look pretty good. You can't see the pictures here, but it just looks like something I could make myself in a class, and then put in the kiln and take out. It looks like that,
Right. But
still very
modern.
smooth. You can tell there's a face. You can tell there's the rib. They did the ab, defining ab lines. That's there. So.
Okay. All right, so I guess Weird Wednesday news, since Wednesday's show didn't record, right? Was it Wednesday's show?
Yeah.
Oh, Nevada Town residents is another AP story, which we're living in AP today, by Rio Yamat and Rick Bomer. Blood red crickets invade Nevada Town. Residents fight back with brooms, leaf blowers, snow plows. This is Elko, Nevada. ELKO, Elko. Dana Dolan was driving through her small Nevada hometown when she thought she had come upon a gory crash. The ground surrounding Elko's stretch of Interstate 80 looked as it had been covered in blood. As the red color shifted and moved, she realized instead it was an infiltration of some crickets, some bigger than her thumb. It's almost like a biblical plague, Dolan said, told the Associated Press last week, laughing at the absurdity of the situation that is playing out in Elko, where she lived for 6 years. Tens of thousands of Mormon cricket eggs buried about an inch deep in the soil began to hatch in late May and early June. For weeks, the red critters have been invading swaths of northern Nevada, causing chaos, to the state's longtime entomologist Jeff Knight. The invasion of the cannibalistic crickets has hit especially hard in Elko, found about 20,000 near Idaho and Utah, known for its gold mining. The big red bugs leave behind a stench so horrible, akin to burning flesh, that it forces residents to plug their nose while driving. The critters stick to their tires and the bottoms of their shoes, and their carcasses are everywhere, even in the gyms. When they move, it sounds like rain, Dolan says. Residents and workers have tried to use brooms, leaf blowers, pressure washers, snowplows to get rid of the crickets, only for them to return. State officials have erected signs throughout Elko County warning drivers on slick highways, a popular hangout spot for insects that won't think twice about eating their dead friends. The red creatures blanket highways and scuttle over barriers seeking food. They crackle and pop under the wheels of trucks, creating something like an oil slick. And Jeremiah Moore's Spring Creek, whose vehicle slid off the road after a highway encounter with the Mormon crickets. I was coming home, and it came around the corner, and it came around a little too fast, and I about ended up in a ditch full of water, Moore said. It was pretty
Great
intense.
Voice.
Thank you. One hospital even hired 4 temporary part-time employees whose main duty was to clear the campus of crickets long enough for the patients to enter the building. The group called itself the Cricket Patrol. We're just trying to keep them moving on their way, said Steve Burrows, a spokesperson for the Northeastern Nevada Regional Hospital. When the Cricket Patrol wasn't on duty, Burrows said the other hospital employees stepped in. There was a medical worker in the cardiology unit who, still in his black scrubs, went outside the hospital's ambulance bay between seeing patients to swat crickets away with a broom, Burrows said, and IT specialists helped with cleanup efforts. The outbreaks of Mormon crickets, which are native to the Great Basin and Intermountain West, have been recorded throughout history across the West, from Nevada to Montana, Idaho, and Oregon. There are records of infestations dating back to the 1930s, according to entomologist Knight. Legend has it, the insects got their name when they started devastating crops planted by the Mormon settlers who had moved into the Salt Lake Valley in Utah. Knight said the settlers prayed for relief that came in the form of seagulls. Seagulls ate the crickets. That's also why they are the state bird of Utah. In Oregon, depending on how you say it, state lawmakers in recent years have allocated millions of dollars to assess the problem instead of a Mormon cricket and grasshopper suppression program. The Mormon cricket is not a true cricket, but a shell-backed katydid. They are flightless, but travel together in bands that can range in range of size from 5 acres to hundreds of acres. Yet the invasion in Elko this year isn't unprecedented for its size and timing. The crickets hatch far later than usual springtime birth, delayed by the especially wet spring, and snow-packed winter in northern Nevada, Knight said. Each spring, or summer in this case, the crickets born that year will mate and lay a new generation of eggs in the soil. Those eggs are meant to hatch the following spring, but some will lay dormant in the soil for up to 11 years, Knight said. Eggs can accumulate in the dirt. Well, a little cicada action going on here, right? You overpopulate the area. Even though you have no defense mechanism, you survive by mere numbers, right? Eggs can accumulate in dirt for years until a drought comes along, triggering the sleepy eggs to hatch all at once, and then the cycle repeats. In his nearly 40 years working with Nevada Department of Agriculture, 32 years of those as an entomologist, Knight said he can recall 4 invasions. The infestation in the early 2000s was the most impressive in my mind, looking at the overall scope. Knight remembers one time driving from Reno to Utah on Interstate 80 and being surrounded by a swarm of red nearly the entire drive. That's really impressive. Then we can go almost 10, 15 years without hardly see any. From about 2008, or any crickets about 2019, Elko's new residents won't be moving out until at least mid-August, much to everyone's despair. But where do the crickets go and where do they leave? They die, I said. The male crickets the male crickets after they mate, and the female crickets after laying their eggs. So that's what you're in for in Nevada. Nature coming back.
The bugs. So many bugs.
Just crickets, and they're all cannibalistic crickets. But you have found the secret to survival. When your brother dies, eat him.
And they smell like burning bodies, and they're bloody looking. It's great. Okay.
And they're slimy, and they're red, and it looks like blood. Oh my! And they look like they have a cicada-like cycle too, or there's some.
Yeah.
Some are really freaking horrible. Like this year, for instance. This year, it's bad. You're sorry.
Okay, in culture news, highly unusual lost 17th century portrait of a black and white woman as equals is saved in the UK. A painting, this is by Dahlia Alberge on The Guardian. A painting has been saved for the UK recognition of its outstanding significance for the study of race and gender in the 17th century Britain. It will be announced on Friday. The anonymous artist's portrait of two women, one black, one white, depicted as companions and equals, with similar dress, hair, and jewelry, has been bought by Compton Verney, an award-winning gallery in Warwickshire. The titled allegorical painting of two ladies, the work, part of English school dating to about 1650, appears to be a moralistic picture criticizing the use of cosmetics in altering a person's natural appearance. Their faces are covered in curious beauty patches that were fashionable at the time, and which the painting's inscription condemns as a sin of pride, a widespread opinion in the 17th century. Wearers of such patches or spots made of silk or velvet risk provoking the wrath of God. Part of the purpose of the patches was to hide imperfections or signs of disease. The white sitter wears black patches of various shapes, and the black sitter has white ones. The painting was at risk of permanently leaving the UK after being auctioned in Shropshire in 2021. A temporary stop to allow UK institutions to acquire it was placed by the reviewing committee on the export of works of art and objects of cultural interest. The independent body, serviced by the Arts Council, advised the Secretary of State for Digital Culture and Media and Sport on whether a cultural object intended for exports is of national importance under specified criteria. Noting that its departure from the UK would be a misfortune, the committee's report stated, the depiction of a black female sitter in a 1650s painting was highly unusual, inviting important debate about race and gender during the period. It added, it visualizes in a way that no other painting of the period does. The early modern debates concerning the morality of cosmetic use, discourses on ideal beauty and blackness, issues concerning gender and hierarchy and female agency, as well as attitudes to race and ethnicity, especially so in an age that witnessed increasing global contact through trade and colonial expansion. An unidentified owner has intended to take the painting overseas unless a UK buyer could be found. The picture, an oil on canvas measuring 640 by 750 millimeters, was unknown to scholars until it surfaced at an auction from the estate of 6th Lord Kenyon. It had an initial value of between $2,000 to $4,000, but it sparked such intense interest that it sold for $220,000. Now it has been acquired by the Compton Verney for more than $300,000, with $154,600 from the National Heritage Memorial Fund and $50,000 from the VA purchase grants. Compton Valley covered the rest through an acquisition fund established by the sale of a painting several years ago. Two ladies will now undergo conservation and extensive study to understand the complex nature by the Yale Center of British Art at Yale University, before going on public display next year. Compton Verney is based in Grade 1 listed Georgian mansion within 120 acres of parkland designed by the 18th century landscape architect Lancelot Capability Brown. With its permanent collections, it is an accredited museum and registered charity. Geraldine Colleen, its CEO, said, "The painting fits so interestingly with our collections. We've got portraits and folk art, where we're thinking about different ways of showing people. For us, it opens up a conversation about who's in portraits and why certain people aren't in portraits. By certain people, they mean brown people." She added, "We don't know who the women were. The fact that it's two women, one is black, one is white, is particularly interesting for us now, and that they were stories that we were deliberately not told." So, there you go. Just, some black people have always existed. We've known that. And
Yeah, we just
no
one
country
day.
in the world has ever been a pure racial society ever. In this day in history.
Yep. We've always been cold. Nobody's pure in no matter how much they want to pretend they are. All right, this day in history. In 1298, German King Adolf of Nassau was deposed in favor of Albert I. Well, there was German king of, I didn't know there was no real Germany in 1298. What did they have? 1817, popular English actor John Philip Kemble retired after his last performance and where he played Coriolanus, a great guy. 1865, a chief and Confederate General Stanwady surrendered in the close of the American Civil War, one of the last commanders to do so. Waited until June to surrender. 1868, American inventor Christopher Latham Scholes and two others were granted a patent for the typewriter. In 1925, an expedition under A.H. McCarthy and H.F. Lambert became the first to reach the summit of Mount Logan, the second highest mountain in North America. In 1940, sprinter Wilma Rudolph, the first African-American woman to win 3 track and field gold medals in the single Olympics, was born. So happy birthday to Wilma Rudolph. 1961, the Antarctic Treaty was enacted, reserving the entire continent for free and non-political scientific investigation, which will last until we discover a really, really rare mineral there that we will fight over, and it'll become the subject of a new movie. 2006, American television producer Aaron Spelling died, who produced such shows as Charlie's Angels, Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Beverly Hills 90210, died in Los Angeles. In 2016, the United Kingdom voted to withdraw from what? The European Union in their little Brexit vote, which they've been contributing to their downfall ever since.
Well, as we read earlier, it wasn't really a downfall, was it?
Yeah, right. Well, they haven't solved their problem. Let's put it that way. Okay. Whatever they thought their problem was, it didn't solve it. And it's in an event today. Cue the bagpipe music. The Battle of Bannockburn. That's right. On this day in 1314, the Battle of Bannockburn, a decisive engagement in Scottish history, wherein the Scots defeated the English to regain their independence and establish Robert the Bruce as Robert the First. And birthdays today, it's Clarence Thomas. It's Clarence Thomas's 74th birthday. Happy grifting, Clarence. Happy grifting. And also birthdays today, it's Zinedine Zidane, a French football player, was born this day in 1972. 1964, Joss Whedon, American screenwriter and producer, was born. 1929, June Carter Cash, American singer and actress, was born. And 1912, Alan Turing, British mathematician and logistician, was born. And what day is it today? I'm glad you asked. It is National Detroit-Style Pizza Day. I did not know there was a Detroit-style pizza, but I guess I have to go buy one.
You're going to go by Detroit, right? Might as well stop by.
Well, I'm in Sault Ste. Marie, which is right on the border with Canada. It's in Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm in Michigan, not anywhere close to Detroit, but I'm not going to cover the martini things. That seems to be an ad now. It keeps popping up every day. The World Martini giveaway. I'm like, who cares? Come on, man. Martinis? Who gives a crap? I'm sorry, I'm not a martini drinker. I don't get the attraction. National Pecan Sandies Day. That's a cookie.
Okay.
It must be a British thing because nobody says Sandies in the United States. If I said Sandies, what would you think? I have no. National Take Your Dog to Work Day. I'm sure that's frowned upon nearly everywhere. I'm sorry. Take your dog to work and get absolutely nothing done while everybody's petting your dog. And everybody else. Oh, look, they killed a guy. Oh, he pooped on the desk. National Hydration Day, which should be every day. It's also today. And it's National Pink Day. So there's not 2 minutes going on today. Take your pink dog to work and make sure you stay hydrated.
Okay. This has been Allison here from the Netherlands. Excited about, I don't know, statues being in Rome. Yeah, let's go look at some bath statues in Rome. Naked people. Love to see some nude statues in Rome. And we will see you next week for some more exciting updates on who else is going to be drowning in the ocean, since that's all that happened this week. Not just the refugees as well. Don't forget about the refugees, because I know a lot of people on social media are very angry that we're not talking about the refugees. Well, this show talks about the refugees. And we need to save the refugees also from the ocean, not just billionaires.
Yeah. We covered the news of these poor countries you never hear of. And they're out there going, hey, CNN, we're still here. You know. Anyway, signing off from Michigan, today's June 23rd, 2023 edition of Before Coffee.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.